I just want to welcome everyone here to the Hardinge booth at 3013. We do appreciate your interest. We appreciate your the opportunity to be able to share with you some of our products that we have out on display today. And we're going to start with one of the things. When I started into the industry, most of the industry and some of the elder folks that have been in the industry for a long period of time are going to realize that most of the bar stock and what we started with as far as machining process was out of three different types of material: round, square, or hex. Every now and then it got to be pretty wild and crazy. We had some rectangular shaped Kaulitz that we had to manufacture. But that was the mainstay when I first got involved in the industry back in 1978. Today, the complexity of the parts and the accuracy of the parts that we manufacture today within this industry has dictated that the work holding has to expand and has to go above and beyond what we used to produce and what we used to develop for our end customers. Out throughout the show, you're going to see that there's a lot of companies that are here and they are showcasing their machines. They're showcasing the machines and the capability of their machines. And one of the things that we as a machine tool builder as well recognize that there are two weak links to every machine tool that is produced and manufactured. Those two weak links are the work holding and the tooling. Now, while we don't produce and while we don't supply tooling, we do offer work holding. And if you can't hold the part, or if you can't have the proper tooling to machine the part, that equipment does not fulfill and live up to its expectations. And one of the last things that any customer wants to do is to be able to purchase and to spend all that capital investment in a machine that does not live up to its expectations, only because of work holding or possibly tooling. So what we have done is in recognizing that with our own machines that we manufacture, we have several different products that we're going to kind of showcase throughout our booth this morning, just to give you an idea of the things that we have to take into consideration. In many cases, we have to get to know and understand the customer's application and machining process almost as well as they do in order to be able to provide them with a proper work holding and a solution that is going to meet the needs of what they have to produce. We get into all different types of industries. Aerospace, there are some that are loose tolerance, there are some that are very, very tight tolerances, and we are able to produce work holding that's going to provide them to be able to, for that machine to live up to its expectations. One of the things we're going to first start out with is in the industry today, 3-jaw chucks is used predominantly throughout the industry. We have showcased here a quick change chuck, and that quick change chuck, just by the push of a button, you're able to change out those jaws and to set those jaws to the proper length. This is one of our F+ chucks, and we are able to just simply adjust that manually with a push button out on the outside and to be able to adjust that and to set that for the next size. We have other types of quick change jaws that are available for you with the push button. And those jaws are going to be able to swap out and to be able to change in that quickly and to be able to set up in your next jaw. All of those types of things are part of, and you're going to hear some things and some terminology used where we need to be able to cut down on our cycle time and our setup times. Cycle time is a lot of times is looked at in just the machine cutting, but you're also looking at the setup time. If you're not making chips and if you're not cutting parts, you're not producing money. So setup reduction is something that is always going to be a consideration for the industry. And we have to look at the quick change options that we offer in the industry today. 3-jaw chucks at a quick change, standard chucks that we have available, and we can also take any type of a standard product and we can always customize it to fit the demands or the needs that are needed for that particular application. We move over to the next cart with some VMC tooling. We get into some collet blocks. And then once again with the collet blocks, to be able to do multiple parts, to be able to eliminate the number of hours in setup time, and to be able to run parts, do multiple parts, and to capitalize on a setup, and to be able to produce a number of parts all at the same time, or it may be a single part, just depending upon what the customer is doing. Job shops, it's very small lot sizes. You get into some of the production environments, they may do 1,000, they may do 1,000,000 parts of the same exact part, day in and day out, for the industry that they serve. So when we get into some of the collet blocks, we have to take into consideration what are the needs, whether it's a pullback system, a dead link system, do they need to go above and beyond the capacity of the collet? And if so, how do we accomplish that for the customer so they can utilize something that is going to be versatile, and it's going to be something that they can then use not just on the VMC, they might be able to use it on their lathes as well. And you're going to see as we showcase some of the products that we have out on display, we are very adamant about pushing the fact that you have some commonality of tooling. Tooling that has once been predominantly for a turning lathe or a turning machine wasn't utilized or able to be utilized on a VMC. We now are focusing on the fact that you can have commonality between both. And we'll be able to take a look at some of those examples over here on a cart that we have into the corner. So once again, we have quick change Kaulitz. The quick change Kaulitz is something that you're going to hear within the industry, and that collet simply changes out by collapsing that collet. It lowers the back end of that collet, and you just simply pop it into the assembly that quickly. And you're able to go from job to job just simply by changing out that collet. The fixture stays in place. The fixture is always going to stay on the machine or the mill, and all you're simply doing is just changing out the collet for the next size, next shape, the next operation, and the next job that you have going. These are available in 42, 65, and 80 millimeter assemblies, and once again, taking that technology and then being able to utilize that into a collet block system that now is a stationary collet block that would be used on a VMC mill, and being able to use the common tooling between a turning lathe and then also a VMC mill. While we recognize that the quick change system is something that is predominantly used within the industry today, we also recognize that there are some limitations to this particular system. With our collet ready spindles, we are able to do OD clamping, ID clamping, we're able to do large diameter parts. When you utilize the Flex C system or a quick change system, any quick change system, you're pretty much utilizing just an OD clamp. You've minimized what you're able to do, and you're also able to minimize the capacity. So what we have done is building off from, once again, the same base that you would have in place, you then are able to take this collet and remove that collet, put another adapter in its place, and then you're able to simply utilize another style of collet. That next style collet just simply pops into place, and you're constantly building off of that modular system. This particular system is going to stay on the spindle. You're just simply going to change out that adapter, whether you go to smaller diameters. You also have the option and the capability of being able to go to ID clamping, which is something you couldn't do previously. And then in addition to that, you can then also utilize the system in place to utilize for large diameter parts. So you're able to get up to a 6-inch diameter part utilizing the step chuck closure, and then also be able to use the step chuck. The step chuck closure is definitely has to be used. One of the things that we didn't talk about that we could have talked about over there with the 3-jaw chucks. 3-jaw chucks, typically we have to be very conscientious of the amount of grip force loss from the lowest RPM to the max RPM. Predominantly, most of your 3-jaw chucks are going to lose 66% of their grip force when they go from the lowest RPM to the max RPM. And the only reason that happens is because of centrifugal force. So centrifugal force is eliminated by the fact that you capture this outside closing taper on this large diameter inside of this, what we refer to as a step chuck closure. That eliminates all the impact of your centrifugal force. You're able to maintain your grip force from low RPM to your high RPM because of the fact that that step chuck is enclosed within that closure. So we are able to do something of that nature. And all of these items are something that we truly believe is probably going to become the mainstay within the industry in a number of years. Right now you have 16C, 5C, some of the 20C collets, lathe style collets that are predominantly used. We firmly believe because of the capability and the capacity that this offers, this will replace standard or traditional, what we consider traditional style work holding in the years to come. So we are investing heavily upon the quick change because of the reduction in setup time, its accuracy, its versatility, and you're able to go from, once again, utilizing that from a turning lathe also to a VMC mill and have commonality of tooling. You're not having to reinvest in 2 separate types of tooling for one particular shop. You can utilize it all. One thing that we'll take a quick moment to showcase, there's a lot of our items that we've looked at. We have standard products that we offer throughout the booth. We also have custom products. We do have 2 different types of customs that we actually manufacture. We will take a custom product, such as this, which is a 5C collet. That 5C collet is a standardized collet. It just simply has a custom feature. If you'll notice the ceramic inserts that are in the front of that, we produce this particular collet for a customer that uses it in a welding operation. So obviously in a welding operation and the heat that is generated from the welding operation, it being absorbed into the metal of the collet, and that collet had very little longevity. They were having to replace these collets very quickly and very rapidly. They would wear out within their machine tool in their application. So what we actually did is we put some ceramic inserts into the inside of that just simply to dissipate the heat. Just to be able to take the heat away from the metal, and the ceramic inserts will absorb that heat and dissipate it. It didn't eliminate that 100%, but it did give them the additional longevity that they needed and that they required for their applications. So we are able to do standard collets with custom features. We also do collets that are complete customs. This is a collet that gets an awful lot of attention within our booth from year to year as we show this particular collet. This collet is a crimping collet. So this particular collet, if you take a look at, for example, a perfume bottle where you've got a spritzer top, this is crimping around glass to be able to seal off that spritzer cap, or even in a medical industry where you see in the movies where they've got this glass vial and they fill this syringe and squirt it in the air. That's what this particular collet does. It puts the cap and the seal on the top of the perfume bottles or the spritzer bottles, and it has to close very precisely so that it doesn't crack or damage the glass bottle that it's being used in. So this is something that gets an awful lot of attention. And once again, just to showcase the capability that we have, and once again, it's not necessarily what we have, but in all honesty, it's what the industry demands. Once again, going back to our title and our topic, this is what the industry demands. They have to have these things for the parts that they manufacture. As I started out with the opening part of this particular session, we talked about the fact that, hey, parts were typically round, hex, or square. Every now and then a rectangular shape. We look at some of the shapes that we have here. Those shapes have gotten so much more complex and from what they were in the past, and we have to be able to move and evolve with that industry to meet the demands that are necessary within the industry that we serve. One last topic that we'll touch upon is once again with Rotary Products. As a machine tool builder, once again, we invested into Rotary Products for fourth axis. We invested in for positioning. We get customers that constantly are asking for whether or not they need what they refer to as a fourth axis. And once again, being able to provide them the solution that they need for what their application requires. Most customers will come to us asking for a fourth axis. And then we have to talk to them and try to understand, do they truly need a fourth axis where they need a rotary product, or do they need an indexer? And what are the differences between the two? An indexer is simply nothing more than just a positioning. It's going to position a part so you can be able to machine a specific feature onto that part. So as an indexer, most people, that's what they truly need, even though they ask for a fourth axis. When in fact, the fourth axis is going to be tied into the machine tool control. You're going to be doing some contour milling with that product, and it needs to be able to rotate while it is machining. That's true fourth axis, or what we would consider as a rotary product. Whereas an indexer is simply just going to position a part. It's going to move, it's going to hold that part steady while you are there. And once again, understanding the customer's parts, whether it's an on-center application or if it's an off-center application. Do they need a clamp? Do they need step chucks, closures? What does their process require in order for them to be able to produce the part? So the demands that we have put upon us and the industry today with the Workholding, once again, going back to our opening statement, the two weakest links on any machine tool is going to be the Workholding and the tooling. Regardless of what that machine is capable of doing, if you can't hold that machine accurately and you can't hold it firmly, you're not going to be able to machine that part. You need to be able to have the proper Workholding for that machine to produce parts to its full potential and capability. And the same is true with tooling. Tooling has to be the proper tooling for the parts that you're using. And once again, even though we don't supply tooling, once again, as you can see from some of our displays, we obviously have some very good partners within the industry that provide us with the inserts and the tooling that are needed to be able to produce some of the parts that we have today. Hard turning is something that we do and is a growing need and demand within the industry. And hard turning takes some very special tooling. And so we are able to get the proper tooling based on our suppliers and our vendors for tooling. And then once again, to be able to supply the machines. And it's a complete solution, whether we supply the mill with the indexer or the rotary products, and then be able to implement that or to supply that for other brands of machines, not just Hardinge machines, but all brands of machines, and to be able to integrate that into their machine tool. Once again, the focus has been demands of work holding today. They continue to evolve. And for those manufacturers and providers out there, you have to change and evolve with it to be able to stay current and relative within the market. And I think that we've done a pretty good job of that. We continue to study that all the time. Some of the things that we haven't looked at, we would certainly encourage you to look around at some of the other displays that we have available today. We have some Swiss products, some ID expanding Kaulitz, and just once again, just being able to touch upon all the work holding demands that the industry demands and requires of us today. Once again, I appreciate not only the PMPA, I appreciate Gardner Press for giving us the opportunity to participate in this event, and we trust that you will enjoy the rest of the show. Thank you very much for your attention.